There's a lot of talk, obviously, about playing the game internally, right? You need to manage stakeholders. You need to make sure visibility is important. You need to make sure you have a sponsor who's, putting their hand up for you in the room. And unfortunately, there aren't systems set up in place in organizations. So unless you are proactive as an individual and doing those things and checking those boxes, it's not clear. You kind of get left behind in the race. And so because there's no system set up, it's really up to the individual to manage their career progression. And that's when a lot of women start falling behind.
In this episode of the Juggleverse, Khatija Aslam, founder of Moxy and job-sharing global innovation marketing lead at a Cravy food company, shares her approach to integrating career advancement with family life. She highlights Moxy's platform for collecting women's workplace experiences to inform behavior change solutions alongside systems refined through her own journey as a mother of 3. Khatija's 4 color-coded calendars manage family, personal, corporate, and business commitments, supported by weekly reviews. Moxy addresses inclusion gaps identified via insights from women in the workplace, with table talk facilitating important discussions and driving behavior change at organizations. Her CHRO pitch story illustrates how real-life interruptions can strengthen client relationships. Hello, Khatija. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Edith. Thank you for having me.
Describe the setup of your 4 synced color-coded calendar, please. How is it going?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny because I was looking at my calendar pre-kids on my phone the other day, and it was pretty much empty.
It was like 8 years ago, sometime, something like that, right? 8
years ago. Yeah. It was, and things were very simple. But now it's four color-coded calendars. So I've come up with a system. The first one is a joint calendar that I share with my husband. And that is, everything family related, kid related, anything we do as a couple. The second one is my personal calendar. And that's where, if I have to go to the gym or any, social appointments or engagements that I have, that goes in the second calendar. And then the third one is my corporate calendar, which is for the corporate role that I do. And then the fourth one is for Moxy. So they're all color coded. And it gives me an instant snapshot of what my week looks like. And it does look a bit crazy sometimes. There's a lot of overlapping activities. Like I even add in the homework deadlines for the kids. But it helps me, to make sure that I don't miss out on anything and, that everything is in place and I can go to sleep in peace instead of thinking about, oh gosh, like what if I miss something?
Did you used to be so organized before your kids as well?
I was. I guess I'm an Excel sheet kind of person. I do like to have, a structure in place. And I like to, even if I'm planning travels, I have an Excel sheet and I map it all out. So I do like to have an organized system. But I think after having kids, it's definitely, become a lot more.
What does your Sunday review entail? And what happens when there's a sudden change?
So my Sunday review is when after I put the kids to bed, I'm in bed and I'm just reviewing my calendar for the week. And that's when, I see the snapshot, I recalibrate where needed. A lot of the times it is often between my corporate and business related stuff because I work 2.5 days a week for corporate. Sometimes, ideally, I like to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, first half, but sometimes meetings pop up on a Thursday morning. And so that's when I'll recalibrate my work week. And I have the autonomy to be able to do that, to say, okay, I'll work the first half of every day this week versus working the first 2.5 days of the week. So I recalibrate that. I delete anything that, is not a priority or, that I can move around. And then I take it from there. So it's very much still not perfect yet, but at least there's some kind of a system in place to be able to do that. If something comes up or pops up, that usually doesn't just happen on a Sunday, it happens any day of the week.
Yeah.
So it does get updated real time.
Unexpectedly.
There are, calls that are made to just move things around, shift things around. So that tends to happen. But I tend to, have a prioritization in my head. Like, okay, sometimes I do deprioritize on some social stuff. If, for example, something pops up with the kids or some business things pop up, so then that kind of gets deprioritized accordingly. Yeah. So I try my best.
Walk us through the CHRO pitch where your children joined unexpectedly. You also have a story with that.
Yeah. So this was...
What steps did you take to manage it?
Yeah. So this was a pitch that I had with the CHRO. It took me weeks to get a meeting in her calendar. And it was finally there. It was my final pitch. I had already gone through the other stakeholders in the organization. So it was the final pitch before we get the go-ahead. And it so happened that the time that I was able to get with her was exactly the time that the kids come back from school.
Yeah.
So I was a bit nervous about that. I had already prepped everyone. My husband was at home. I was like, okay, I'm going to go in on this pitch. I had prepped the kids because I know they have a habit of crashing my calls. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But so when the pitch started, we were about 15 to 20 minutes in, and suddenly I hear them coming in. And, I started panicking because I'm like, oh no, I hope they don't crash my call now. And true enough, they did. They ran into the meeting and they were like, oh, can I please, present your slides? Can we, play with it? The good thing is, the CHRO was kind enough to engage with them and be like, sure, why not? So they basically presented my slides for me. And there was some serious side eye, shooting towards them. And I was trying to, keep calm, take deep breaths, panic message my husband to be like, please come up now. You need to get them out of the way. And then when all of that got settled and, they eventually left the room, some coercion was required. I was finally able to, help get my thoughts together and then continue with the pitch. And the plot twist was, and even though I ended the call thinking, oh gosh, I think I forgot to mention this. I should have mentioned this. It was interesting because we actually got the pitch at the end. So we won the pitch, and to me that was a big reminder of why I do what I do, and also the amazing clients that we work with is that they don't hold these biases against us or judge us for them. So it was really great to see that.
So actually, it affirmed the value of the authenticity of your business, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there was something around the element of not hiding behind, my situation or the circumstances that I live in, and, being very candid and open that I am doing this while having 3 kids, but I am still passionate about it. And it is because of the outcome that gets delivered. And so it's great to be able to see companies that still believe in that and give us the chance to partner with them. Yeah.
How does Moxy aggregate women's shared experience to pinpoint equity gaps across Asia and Southeast Asia? And what data trends have emerged? How do you see that?
Moxy started with the insight of, there's that leaky pipeline effect. We see almost half of women drop out of the workforce between mid to senior levels of their careers. And that's when a lot of companies end up losing the pipeline. And I was really fascinated by that because I was about to enter that phase of my life. And I was fascinated to understand why it happens the way it does. But I wanted some more data, and there wasn't a lot of data from an Asia perspective. A lot of the lean-in data focuses on the US, Europe. It focuses on India and China as key Asian markets, but not a lot in Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. So I was quite keen to understand, what exactly happens, what goes wrong. So what we do on the Moxy platform now is we actually ask women to share their anonymous feedback about their workplace experiences. At the moment, we're focusing on equality in the workplace. So from a career progression perspective, do you have equal access to opportunities? We ask questions around flexibility, around pay transparency. And so you can go in, you can opt to either mention or not mention your company name, but you answer a very simple questionnaire of, about 10 to 15 questions about your workplace experiences. And then we aggregate that data and we actually show it on a dashboard on our website. So anyone can see that data. Some of the key data points that have emerged is, over 50% of women still don't have access to mentorship and sponsorship opportunities in the workplace. Only 30% feel that career progression and promotion opportunities are fair and transparent. It's only 30%, so that's quite a small number. And then the other data point that we see is about 38% of companies are open to exploring flexible working options. So when we ask them about whether you can work from home or whether you have the ability to take time off, that's fine. So that's about 70%. But when we ask about whether your organization is truly open to exploring different flexible options like job sharing or part-time options, it's only 38%. And then starkingly, 72% of women still report facing microaggressions in the workplace. So these are subtle comments that you hear like, oh, you may not be suitable for this project, or you should smile more often. So those kind of subtle remarks that they face, over 72% still face that in the workplace. So that kind of gives us, more data, more perspective of, okay, this is what is going on. And then when we talk to employers, we share that data on an aggregate level, like, this is what we're seeing come through. And through that is when we start then designing behavior change solutions, that there is a need to drive awareness of certain behaviors that are happening in the workplace. And how do you, through, interactive methods and storytelling games, change behaviors internally, whether it's male, whether it's female, in the form of allyship, from managers, from senior leaders. How do you do that? And so that helps us inform the solution side of things, which is when we start partnering with companies.
So this is, in some sense, what you are doing is a kind of training and coaching, but in a different way. So it's very specifically focusing on women and women situation in a business world and company world.
Yeah.
How are these businesses and companies get these information from you? So what's the first insight from them when you say that, okay, this is the data and this is what we have, and receive this feedback from your employers, for example.
Yeah. So typically when we talk to companies, we try to understand how much they know first internally. And a lot of the times companies are operating in the dark. They think there's some problem. They can see that, female talent retention is an issue, but they can't quite figure out why. And sometimes companies also have glint and pulse surveys internally, which will give them some kind of an indication of where the lacking areas are. So they come to us with that. And then either if we think that's enough data, we then start proposing behavior change solutions to them. If we think, we have enough information. If we don't, then we also help them get the data internally. So if they engage with us, one of our products, Table Talk, can be used for research as well, where we provide prompt cards to users. It's almost like a focus group discussion, but it's done in a facilitated way with a storytelling collaborative game involved. So it's prompted cards that enable you to talk about your experiences. We record the conversations, we analyze the transcripts, and we come up with, we tag the stories, positive stories, negative stories, which areas are appearing more and more. And then we provide that data to the employers where, we share, okay, this bucket has the most issues. Equality and career progression has the most issues. Flexibility seems to be a pain point. This percentage of stories were positive in this space, this percentage were negative. So it's a very interesting blend of positive and negative stories, and qual and quant. Because a lot of the times when you have a focus group interview or discussion, it becomes quite bland. But with the game and in that interactive method, you create a safe space for women to share more about their experiences. And of course, we don't divulge any names or identity of any sorts. It's all aggregated at a total level when we share that data back with companies. And it's proven to be very effective in providing recommendations. And it's quite different as well. It's almost a breakthrough approach because typically, like I said, it's focus group discussions. It's just qualitative data. You don't get the quantitative side of things. So this enables us to do that as well.
Where these issues come and originate from within a company, what do you see what's the main point in that sense when these discomfort and dissonations start? And is there a general topic that it's usually around?
Yeah, so the one that we see come up the most is around progression and promotion processes.
Okay.
That not being clear and transparent. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about playing the game internally, right? Like you need to manage stakeholders, you need to make sure visibility is important, you need to make sure you have a sponsor who's, putting their hand up for you in the room. And unfortunately, there aren't systems set up in place in organizations. So unless you are proactive as an individual and doing those things and checking those boxes, it's not clear. You kind of get left behind in the race. And so because there's no system set up, it's really up to the individual to manage their career progression. And that's when a lot of women start falling behind. So I think it's just structurally how the corporate world is set up. That promotion and career progression opportunities, it's not clear and transparent. Some organizations have frameworks in place that make it really clear. But we know at the end of the day, there's that human level and that social level at which you need to connect with someone who's about to promote you. And that is essentially, I think, where the disconnect happens. So it is a tough one to solve for, but I believe it can be done, provided there's enough awareness within the organization. And it needs to be from the senior leadership. What kind of culture they're trying to drive, whether they want to give equitable access to these opportunities to women across and set up the right systems in place. So I think it comes down to that. And aside from that, I think it's not just organizational barriers. There's also personal and societal barriers. The society that you are surrounded in, what kind of biases that holds, how are you conditioned to think within that society, but also personally, women feeling or holding themselves back from opportunities until they feel like they're fully ready for it. So there's a whole mix of issues that happen, and it's a very complex issue to solve for. But I think we've managed to uncover a lot of it. And when we talk to employers and we're doing the research, we're helping them with researching this internally. We try to break it down by, okay, what are the personal barriers? What are the societal barriers? What are the organizational barriers? And which areas is it most lacking in? And where are the opportunities areas? And then we create recommendations for change as well. So I think it provides a very comprehensive view and an action plan for companies to then start executing and working on.
I assume that the outcome of these table talks must be very successful, but how can you measure the results? Can you measure it at all?
Yeah, so I've thought about doing that a couple of times. I think one of the questions that we ask after our sessions is, how confident do you feel about managing situations differently, managing certain negative scenarios differently after playing the game? And so we ask them to rate that experience. And so there is an uptick that we see in that rating scale that we see come through. And then, of course, the more sessions that an organization does, that also tells us, okay, they see this as a valuable tool to drive change internally. And they want to educate the rest of the organization, other teams, because it needs to happen at a total level. You can't just train one team and then forget about the others. So that gives us also credibility and the belief that, this is working.
And I think there should be a kind of evolution of this whole progress and process.
Yeah. So I think one of the ways
it takes time
to track, it takes time. And one of the key measures, for our long-term partners is looking at what is the level of female employees that you're seeing across different levels at year 0. And then year 1, and then year 2. So seeing that progression, helps, and to see that, okay, there is an uptick, there is, retention happening versus losing employees.
What key questions from Table Talk have proven most effective in manager training?
So I would say one that really stood out was around how I was offered a role, a stretch assignment, but my manager didn't put it forward to me because he thought I wasn't in that right stage of life to be able to pursue it.
The right stage of life,
because they're
sense?
pregnant or they are about to have a family. And that is often a big conversation that happens during that session, because you're in a table, you're with 8 to 10 different people. Some of them are managers, some of them are senior leaders, some of them are peers, or even one level lower. And that's when the conversation starts getting really rich, because the manager will explain like, oh, it's just because I'm trying to be a caring manager and I didn't really mean to sideline this person. And I'm trying to be more mindful of her circumstances and give her the chance and the space to do what I think she wants to do. And then another person who will be on the table will speak up and say, no, but you didn't even ask her. And that becomes an aha moment for the manager to think, oh, yes, actually, I should have before assuming, and even though the intention was not bad, but a lot of the times we are so hardwired with assumptions and biases in our minds that it becomes that aha moment for the manager to be like, oh, yeah, I should have done this differently. So that's one of the key aha moments that have come up. The other one that is interesting is one of the prompts we have is, I decided not to put my hand up for a promotion because I wasn't ready for it. And this one is where, a lot of the personal barriers come up about, and, there's a lot of research to show that women wait till they are 100% ready, or even 90%. They have the skill set that they think they need for the role before they apply for it. Whereas men go for the role even if they're 30, 40% there. So for that one, the aha moment becomes, about how as peers or as managers, you can support and give them the little nudge or the push to be like, it's okay. I think you can do it. I think you have that in you, and give a little bit of a nudge and a push to that person to take on that stretch assignment. Yeah.
Why is there a huge difference between men and women in that sense? What do you think?
I think it's just the way we're wired. I think we look to make sure that we are properly equipped with the skills that we need so that we're able to do the job right. Whereas men tend to have more confidence about being able to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where it comes from. And I think the good thing is now there's a lot more awareness for it. So I think, even now if I look at something, I'd have to remind myself, if I'm looking at a job scope or, any opportunity where I feel like, okay, this will be a bit of a stretch for me, I remind myself of that data point and I tell myself, okay, no, I think I'll handle it. Like I'll figure it out. And maybe this is just the way that I'm wired to approach this. So yeah.
But it can be trained and improved as well.
Yeah, I think it can be trained. So I think that's where the awareness comes in, knowing that, okay, if we are wired that way, or if there's a reason why that's happening, but you can see other genders doing it, then why not us? Yeah.
From your FMCG background to founding Moxy, how have maternity returns influenced your approach to role evolution?
So I think for me, the wake-up call was when I was leaving the FMCG world. We were going through a restructuring. I had just had my number 2, and they are 15 months apart. So I was coming out of maternity leave, and I was headhunted for a role. And, it was for another food company. It was a startup. And so I went in, I think I was about 4 months postpartum. And I was pretty candid and open about coming back from maternity leave. And the interview went really well. I got I got like good feedback from the manager as well, from the hiring manager. And then I got an email from the headhunter a couple of days later to say that, so-and-so thought you were a great fit for the role, the experiences match. He just doesn't think that considering the life stage you're at right now, it would be suitable for you, considering the amount of travel that's required. And interestingly, the headhunter was a female. So that was a wake-up call. And I was like, oh, wow. And it had never happened to me before. It was interesting. And it wasn't so much the rejection. It was the fact that it was assumed. And it made me want to dig deeper into understanding why. Why was I not even asked if I'm okay with that? So it was that assumption side that really made me wonder about how exactly do I want to proceed with this moving forward. And I think at the end of the day, the lesson it gave me was clarity. What is the kind of employer, or who is the kind of employer that I want to work with? Are they going to be outcome driven, or are they always going to hold it against me, or worry about the fact that, oh, she has kids, she's too busy, can't give her that assignment, or can't let her do this. So it ended up giving me a lot of clarity about being very intentional about the kind of roles that I will do, and how I design my work life in a way that works for me. So I don't have to choose between family and work.
What would have been the right decision and act from the employer's side in this situation?
I think the employer could have gotten on another call with me, or in that interview itself discussed how open I was to traveling. I think it would have just been a simple question. And I could have very well said, yeah, no, it wouldn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, the choice should be yours. It shouldn't be theirs to make. So I think we deserve to be asked.
What advice stems from your transitions for women re-entering after career breaks?
So I think my advice would be to be really clear about what works and doesn't work for you. You need to really map out what are your negotiables and non-negotiables. Is it the number of hours you work? Is it the salary? Is it travel? So to be really clear about what works, what doesn't work, and then assess the employer as well. Talk to other people who are working in that company to understand what the culture is like, how supportive they are. Do they work based on outcomes, or is there a lot of bias that exists internally? So I think just having that clarity on negotiables, non-negotiables, communicating those upfront, and doing your research is really important. Yeah.
How do you and your husband align on mental load through shared calendars effectively, and what made it really, really successful?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's very successful yet. I think it's a work in progress.
Sometimes it collapses.
Sometimes, yes, their conversations need to be had. Yeah. But, I think we're getting there. One thing that we did last year was to really sit down and create buckets of, what exactly are our key buckets of priority, whether it's education, co-curricular like activities, socials with friends, and then, managing meal planning at home, groceries. So
but can you prioritize, because these
you can't. So we need to then delegate.
All of them
and
are
split
really
it.
important.
They are. And over the years, we've realized where our strengths lie. Like, for example, I know for a fact I can't ask my husband to meal plan or do the groceries. Like, it just won't work. And then eventually I also realized that his strength is with the education side of things, because he's studied here. So he's very aware of the local system, and our kids go to local schools. And so, that's kind of how we started delegating. Okay, so I'm going to take care of all home related things, managing, getting all the groceries in, getting diapers and wipes and gosh, whatnot. And then meal planning, and then he takes care of, the education and any extra classes and enrichment that the kids have to do. So we have these broad verticals that we are in charge of and that we have total ownership for. And during the Sunday review, we check in with each other to make sure that, whoever is in charge of doing drop-off pickup is aware of it. So we have kind of a system in place, where we're getting there. Yeah.
Is there any help?
Yes, we do have help. So luckily, I think we stay in Singapore. We do get help. And so, delegating that to help really, really, is a game changer as well. Yeah.
Contrast balance with your concept of intentional design, using examples from your career and family life.
So I think balance is a myth. And, as I mentioned earlier, intentional design for me has been key. The way I approach it is to be very intentional in the way that I design my day and my week. So I have very protected time blocks that I have. So my 7 to 9 a.m. and my 4 to 8 p.m. are kind of flexible time blocks that I reserve for, any family stuff that arrives or anything related to do with the children, to spend time with them when they get back from school. And anything else that may pop up, like grocery run, or booking another class, or anything that I need to put in my calendar. And then my 9 to 4 is focus time, and it's blocked for deep work, any strategic thinking that I have to do. And I try to also block out the week accordingly. So Monday to Wednesday is when that's pretty fixed, the 9 to 4. Thursdays and Fridays are a bit more flexible. If I want to meet up with someone for a coffee and talk about Moxy more, so that's kind of what my Thursdays and Fridays are for. So I think it's really about being intentional with how you craft your week in a way that it works for you. I don't think balance is the right word anymore for any of this, because it often, and I used to think, I need to strive for a better balance in my life, and it would just stress me out even more. So I've tried to move away from that and just thinking that, it's about intentional design and living my life in a way that is aligned to my purpose and what I want to achieve. Yeah. So I think that alignment really helps as well.
Do you have me time as well? And what do you do then?
I do. I think me going to the gym is my me time.
Okay.
Yeah. I will literally leave the house with, there'll be a fight going on behind.
And you just close the door.
Yeah, I just need to go close the door. And on my walk to the gym, I'll be like, oh gosh, like I can't believe this happened again. But then once I'm there, I switch off, So that's been really good. And then, having a coffee with friends, whenever I can. I do have to get better with that. I do tend to deprioritize that a lot, but it's good. It really helps to have also a group of friends that understand the season and the phase of life you're in, and I call it low maintenance friendships. They understand where you're coming from. And when you meet again, you pick up right where you've left off. So I really, I feel blessed to be able to have that.
What reflection exercise via Moxy would you recommend for the viewers assessing their own setups?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest reflection exercise that helped me was really charting out what is working now, what is not working, and what is not sustainable anymore. So just having that clarity on that would really help in terms of designing your life in the way that you want to do it. And I absolutely don't think that we need to choose between family and life. I think it's good to work out options where you can have a little bit of both. So just being really clear of that, about what's working, what's not working. And I mean, in Moxy, we collect that data as well on, what is working and what is not working, what are the key areas. And a lot of the times when we're stuck in this season of our life, we tend to think there's a problem with us. But what the data shows is that it's a systemic issue. And so, the other advice would be to visit our website and, have a look at the insights, submit your workplace experience, if you like. Anonymously. Yep. It's totally anonymous. You can, choose however much detail you want to put, but you will realize through that actually it's a systemic shift. You're not alone in this. And a lot of the times, because it's a systemic shift, it'll become clearer in terms of what you need to change, whether it's redistributing the mental load at home, whether it's asking your boss or your manager for a part-time role or reducing hours at work. So it turns out to be more structural than personal. So that would be, I think a good reflection exercise, for everyone to do.
How did you come up with the job sharing idea?
So job sharing is something I wanted to do after I had my second. So I've been on it for a couple of years. I joined Zespri in a full-time role in 2020. And about 2 to 3 years in, I realized that it was getting to be a bit much. My number 2 was starting to become more active and was demanding more time. And so I decided to take a sabbatical for a year. And just kind of reflect on how I want to redesign this life and how do I want to progress my career moving forward. So after the 1-year sabbatical, when I was supposed to return, I had made up my mind that, I think the way forward is to go part-time. And by then I had also built Moxy in that 1 year. So I wanted to progress with Moxy, but I was also really clear about coming back part-time. So when I had a chat with my manager at that time, it wasn't possible to do my role part-time. And so then I proposed job sharing. And I think that's the key thing is, even when you're asking for what you want, it's good to always have a solution in place instead of letting your manager figure it out. So I went in with the job share solution. I think I'm lucky that my manager, was pretty open-minded about it. I mean, to date, only 3% of companies in Singapore job share.
3%?
3%, even though it's a lot more prominent in countries like Australia, New Zealand, or Germany. So only 3% of companies here job share. So, my boss is New Zealand based. So that's great. And, he was open to exploring it as a pilot. So for a year, he said, okay, let's try this out. Let's see how this goes. So that was great because then we put a job description out. And job share is typically when you do 3 days a week each. So that's 6 days, which is a 1.2 headcount. And that tends to create some issues from a HR perspective. So we settled for 2.5 days a week to be able to make that work as a pilot. And, we put that job description in place. It was a very clear segregation of the role in order to manage stakeholders and make sure that it will be an effective pilot as well. So we were able to carve the role out in a way where I managed the first half of the innovation funnel and my job share partner manages the second half. And we meet once a week to, kind of just update each other versus handing over like in a traditional job share. So it was great. We found someone, I found a partner. And, it's been 1.5 years since we've been job sharing and it's going great. It's now been turned into a permanent arrangement. So the pilot worked and it's great to see, job sharing happening in marketing and innovation because typically you don't see that happening a lot. So it's good to be able to see that. But I think what really helps was having supportive leaders who believe in it and who make sure that it's designed around outcomes and not around how much you show up. But it's really about, okay, as long as you deliver the project, you deliver the outcomes, you are able to continue with this arrangement. So I think just having that has been great. It's a great game changer. Yeah.
What can be a breakthrough in job sharing in the future? What do you think to raise this 3% into more in Singapore?
I think having some kind of training and support for companies to become more comfortable with how it will work and to build the awareness and put forward more case studies for them on how this works would be a game changer in terms of adopting it. Probably also some subsidies to help companies to absorb the cost because while we have a 2.5 day arrangement, but if you have a 3 day a week and you increase your headcount, you're increasing the pay for that employee or for that headcount by 20%. So having subsidies for companies to be able to do that would be useful as well. But I think just a lot of awareness around how it is possible to make it work, to minimize stakeholder risk would be great. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Khatija, for the uplifting conversation and congratulations to Moxy. This is an amazing platform and
thank you.
Good luck for that in the future as well. I wish you a lot of women approach you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We encourage every listener to visit itsmoxy.com to explore Moxy's resources, submit your own workplace experiences to help close equity gaps, and access table talk questions for sparking conversations with managers or teams. Whether auditing your current role, preparing a job share pitch, or refining your calendar systems, take one step this week towards intentional alignment. Your insights could shape the next behavior change solution for workplaces. Join the conversation on our social media. Find handles and links in the episode's description below. Share your takeaways from Khatija's strategies, tag a colleague navigating similar challenges, and subscribe to the Juggleverse on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify for more professional insights. Until next time, keep designing deliberately and keep shining.